Hi all, Alistair from Kapira Maru again, coming to you live and direct from lockdown part 2. Who knows what's going to happen over the next few days in the writhing corona pit that we used to call Victoria, greatest state in the world. So what we've got for you today is the 3 estate wines from our vineyard up in Whitlands. Got a Chardonnay, got a Pinot Gris Gewurz blend, and we've got a Pinot Noir. For those with really good eyesight, certainly better than mine, you'll see that the Chardonnay label is upside down and also says Pinot Noir. So rather than taking the 2 minutes to go downstairs and grabbing one that's properly labelled, I'm sitting here showing you one that isn't. For those who are the uninitiated on Whitlands, it's an unofficial sub-region of the King Valley, about 3 hours, a wine region about 3 hours northeast of Melbourne, up the Hume Highway. If you sort of turn right at Benalla or Wangaratta, you'll get to the King Valley. Lovely part of the world. Sits about 500 metres above sea level, and then Whitlands sits about 300 metres above that, stretching from about 750 metres above sea level to about 810, 820 once you get right up onto the plateau, where you'll find the Birders' beautiful vineyard. We sit right at the end of the main strip of the Whitlands, sitting around 800 metres above sea level, which is pretty high for Victoria, and high for Australian grape growing. So this is a region that sees annual snow, sub-zero temperatures quite frequently. The beauty of it being that high up is we're about 3 to 4 degrees cooler than the King Valley, which isn't a scorching hot region either. So we really do up there in the mountain have a really great climate, really, for grape growing. Heat waves get moderated, nighttime temperatures are really low, and we get really traditionally quite a good rainfall as well. It used to be up around the 1,300 mil a year mark and has dropped a little bit over the last couple of decades, but is still really strong. Whitlands, as an unofficial sub-region, was set up in the early 80s, 1983, I think, by Jim Hardy, who was working at Brown Brothers. And they were looking for a region to produce sort of premium sparkling base for premium Brown Brothers sparkling, which you might know as like the Patricia. So subsequently, a lot of the varieties grown up there are really for traditional sparkling based varieties like Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier and Chardonnay, as well as varieties which favour a bit of an acid load like Riesling, Pinot Gris and Gewurz come across really nicely up there as well. The geology there is really fascinating. It's not something I normally talk about a lot, but I was actually just talking about it the other day and hearing about it in full. So I always knew the soils up there were really deep, red ferrosol, so iron-rich soils that plants absolutely love. But I didn't know the derivation of them, and over a bottle of wine, Jim was telling me about it actually. So the vineyard we work there is still owned by Jim Hardy, the OG of the Whitlands. And we've been working on his behalf for about 5 years now. Anyway, so where do these soils come from? Well, there was a volcano up near the town of Tolmi, I believe, which is this beautiful little hamlet nestled in the mountains. I recommend you take a visit to. Great little pub. And the lava flow flowed north, and it solidified as lava does. Now, I'm not a geologist, so any geologists, including my brother, I suppose, watching, don't have a go at me. But the lava sort of solidified on its way in place, and then either side of this lava flow eroded to create the 2 valleys either side of Whitlands, and subsequently, so Whitlands sort of perched up like a ridge with escarpments either side, and Jim had a really nice expression for it. They call it the river in the sky, which is really nice, sort of lyrical view of it. But I tell you, well worth a visit. Beautiful part of the world, surrounded in native bush, very close to the Alpine National Park. A lot to see and do up in Whitlands, in the King Valley and the Alpine Valley to the north. Beautiful wine as well. So we make these wines. We look after the vineyard up there, along with Jim, and make these wines in the little winery on site. So these 3 wines here, which are all ready to go now, spend their entire life, including bottling, about 20 metres from the vines themselves. So the first one now, I've got to remember from my last video, I don't want to pour myself too big a glass. So I don't need too much more visual proof of rampant alcoholism. So this Chardonnay, beautiful Chardonnay growing area, as I said, really cold. Chardonnay absolutely loves it. Get really linear and crystalline expressions. Some fantastic Chardonnays come out of this region, including, now it's going to escape me, the Rodder Baxendale Chardonnay, which was one of my favourite Victorian Chardonnays. It's just a little bit down the hill at the beautiful Baxendale vineyard. But a great example of Whitland Chardonnay, and I think this one is as well. About 60% new French barrel, about 40% old French barrel. I remember the last video actually when I did that stupid wine wanker thing where you bubble the wine through your palate. It looked ridiculous, so I'm not going to do that again. Yeah, so a little bit of peach, lovely acid, just enough oak to tickle my fancy at least. I just absolutely love this wine. Almost did it again. Next one is Pinot Gris Gewurz, 50-50. This one gets about 3 weeks on skin, so it looks really turbid, and it is. It's got one of the most stable hazes I've ever seen in a wine in my life. So it was open fermented on skins, as I said, for 3 weeks, and then basket pressed off into old French oak and a brand spanking new Hungarian oak barrel. And this is almost always my favourite wine from this vineyard every year, and I've tasted the 1980s versions of this as well, and it's amazing how characteristic the Gris is certainly from this vineyard. It comes through, and it's really interesting to see it even in the skinsier version of what came before, the same traits from this vineyard. Nearly did it again. I love the tannin in this. It's not overpowering, and just sort of just supports the sort of peachy aromas. So it's a bit like, you know, the hit of sort of peach skin when you're biting into a delicious peach. Little bit of pepper. It's really yummy. What would I eat with this Pinot Gris? Great question. I was just talking today about Gravlax. I think the last time I said Gravlax as well. Maybe I really need to eat some Gravlax. Maybe a peach Melba. Yeah. Yeah, not ashamed to say that's absolutely delicious wine. I don't care what anyone else thinks. If you think opposite, you're crazy, because it's just delicious. I'm sorry, but sometimes, as I always say to my students, sometimes you actually just can have the wrong opinion. I always say, you know, there is such thing as a bad question, and that's generally a question asked of me that I don't know the answer to. But definitely you can have the wrong opinion. I think if you don't like that wine, I'm not going to badger on about it, but if you don't like it, please have a look at yourself. So the third one here is a great example of the benefit of wild ferment. Obviously all these wines, well, not obviously, but all these wines are wild fermented in the little winery up there. And I think there's wild fermentation and there's wild fermentation. So if you wild ferment in your winery divorced from the vineyard, you're mostly just getting the dominant yeast in that facility. Now, I'm not saying they're bad yeast by any stretch, they're not. But you generally have a predator yeast, which is going to be found most prolifically in the winery and will dominate early in the ferment. However, I think if you're essentially fermenting in the vines, then you actually, the start of your ferment at least, is going to have contributors from this whole diversity of yeast, which is found in the vineyard. And this being a organic vineyard, you're going to have, as many yeast as species as possible. And this is just a very long story to lead up to the fact I think you can really taste the benefit of wild ferment in this Pinot. You get a lot of that forest floor aromatics, charcuterie, and it's a Pinot which is really fruit dominated, not tannin dominated. For me, I think my personal preference is to have some of the less structural Pinots, ones where the fruit really dominates. And for me, this is one of them. I really like it. Oh man, I'm going to get so much grief for that. Yeah, really delicious, really fruit forward Pinot, lovely tannin. Spent a little bit of time, about 6 months in old French barrels. Fermented for about just under a month, wild, and soaked for about 2 weeks post ferment, and then basket pressed off. Finished the last 6 months of its life in stainless steel. Wild primary ferment, wild malolactic fermentation as well. So really lovely. Thank you very much for taking the time. These 3 of our Whitlands wines are available now. Out just now. Fantastic labels as always from Brett O'Johns, the son of the piranha of the Sunshine Coast. Handsome Devil. Did a great job as usual. Can be found in a great bottle shop near you or online.